Hitler did some good things, said Donald Trump, according to his former chief of staff, John Kelly. Explosive reporting over the last 24 hours, building on much of what we already knew about Donald Trump based on prior allegations, and I'm going to go through it with you. Trump's former chief of staff says that Trump once said, Hitler did some good things. Let's listen to a recording of John Kelly explaining this.
He commented more than once that, that Hitler did some good things too. And of course, if you know history, again, I think he's lacking in that. But if you know what Hitler was all about, it'd be pretty hard to make an argument that he did anything good.
So what would you say when he said to you that Hitler did a lot of good things?
Well, I tell him that. I said, first of all, you should never say that. But if you knew what Hitler was all about from the beginning to the end, everything he did was in support of his racist, fascist life, philosophy, so that nothing he did you could argue was good. It was certainly not done for the right reason. And but he would occasionally say that.
What would he say when you would lay that out to him?
He just, that'd be the end of the conversation usually.
This is one of those things that has come up a lot in casual conversation, which is, whatever you want to say about Hitler, the trains ran on time. The Nazis really knew how to keep public transportation running, or whatever else the case may be. John Kelly really defeats this by explaining it was all done for the wrong reasons. The context of that, listen, there are people in fascist regimes who sometimes they get medicine from the dear leader, or there's jobs, but the jobs are doing horrible things. This stuff about, Hitler coalesced the German people, or all of this stuff. The context is a disaster that should never be praised, and John Kelly lays that out. But the thing is, it doesn't matter to Trump. That's what we've learned. For Trump, the motivations of Hitler aren't what matters. What matters is that Trump is enamored with these authoritarian strongmen who just do whatever the hell they want. Trump's impressed by that form of strength that rules from the top rather than actually building a valuable and worthwhile community. And in these very recordings, John Kelly was also asked, do you think Trump is a fascist? And here's what he had to say about that.
What do you think? Do you think he's a fascist?
Well, I'm looking at the definition of fascism. It's a far-right, authoritarian, ultra-nationalist political ideology and movement characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy. So certainly, in my experience, those are the kind of things that he thinks would work better in terms of running America. Again, back to this issue of, democracy is complicated, messy to operate, probably the worst kind of government there is, except for all the other ones. I think Churchill once said that. And again, our Constitution, our founding is built in to the Constitution and to the way our government operates.
This is not a guy that I would necessarily hire if I was president, which of course I could never be because I was not born in the United States. But this is as thoughtful a reflection as you can have on Trumpism from those that were within Trumpism, as I've seen. And there have been plenty of good reflections, right? Cassidy Hutchinson, and there are other, but this is really good. Now, of course, immediately the reaction from Trump world has been, oh, John Kelly's lying. These are all lies. I just don't think so. We have a lot of evidence that Trump is a liar and no evidence that John Kelly is a liar. Ambassador John Bolton appeared on CNN. His view is that you can believe John Kelly over Trump. Now, of course, Trump would say you also can't believe John Bolton, but you increasingly have to believe that there is a calculated conspiracy to tell lies about Trump that are completely consistent with everything we know about him. So here's John Bolton telling Caitlin Collins. Now, I mean, you can take what he says to the bank.
The campaign has attacked John's credibility in any comparison of what John Kelly might say versus what Donald Trump might say about a particular event, or what these munchkins on the Trump campaign are saying about John Kelly. You can take what John says to the bank. I'm absolutely convinced. I didn't hear many, probably most of these statements myself, but if John says that Donald Trump said them, I believe it implicitly. I think it's certainly this recitation of what he's done should be compelling to people not to vote for Trump. Trump said after leaving office, said it publicly, he would suspend the Constitution or terminate it because of the unfairness, the effort to steal the 2020 election. That statement alone, if he said nothing else, if he had never mentioned the words Adolf Hitler, that alone is disqualifying in my point of view. So if people are troubled, and many Republicans are, they don't like Donald Trump at all. I don't like the media commentators who say the entire Republican Party belongs to Donald Trump now.
You know, it's actually even more than this. If you are not in the Trump cult, if you're just a Republican, but you're not in the Trump cult, you know that what John Kelly is saying is the truth. You know that it's exactly the sort of thing Trump would say because he's so in love with these dictators, that Hitler did some good things. That's exactly the sort of thing Trump would say. And by the way, I know that we kind of go back and forth on this Trump and the Jews stuff. Oh, but Trump's son-in-law is Jewish and his daughter converted and his grandkids are Jewish. Okay, what we have to look at is what Trump says. And Trump is already pointing in the direction of blaming Jewish voters, despite being this tiny fraction of the American population. Trump is setting up to blame Jewish voters if he were to lose.
I wasn't treated properly by the voters who happen to be Jewish. I don't know, do they know what the hell is happening? If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens, because at 40%, that means 60% of the people are voting for the enemy.
Yeah, what Trump is ignoring in this entire thing, it is absolutely true that Jewish Americans are one of the most left voting blocs in the country. Jewish Americans and Black Americans consistently rejecting the retrograde values of the Republican Party and saying, let's vote for progress, let's vote for a positive vision, let's vote for something better. That's true. But there's very few Jews, relatively speaking, in the United States. And in the sense that the election is going to be close. So in the sense that Trump wants to blame Jews preemptively if he loses, it's almost like saying, well, I'm going to blame those whose kids are involved in kids soccer. Statistically speaking, there are so many groups with more people in the United States than Jewish Americans. So why is Trump fixated on Jewish Americans? Your guess is as good as mine, but so far, total consistency from what Trump has said publicly and what he's allegedly said privately. One of our sponsors today is Zippix nicotine toothpicks. Zippix brings you a convenient alternative to smoking and vaping and the vape clouds, the ashtrays, the thing in your lip that people can see. I've seen that around. This is an easier and less messy way to curb the cravings, and you can use Zippix just about anywhere. Zippix is available in 6 flavors with 2 or 3 milligram strength. The nicotine and the flavor are long-lasting, and Zippix has helped countless people kick the bad habits, and they are bad habits. Zippix toothpicks are FDA registered. Their customer service is second to none. It is one of the most cost-effective alternatives. Also, check out their B12 and caffeine toothpicks. See for yourself why so many people have switched to Zippix toothpicks. You can only get Zippix online. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com today. Save 10% with the code PACMAN10 at checkout. Just remember, you must be 21 or older to order. The link is down below.